At the beginning of the movie, a man named Jonathan narrates that, as he writes these words, the witch Margaret Morgan gathers with her coven of 6 deep within the woods, surrounding their beloved Salem. He swears before the eyes of God on this day in the year of our Lord 1969 to destroy all persons who choose to pledge allegiance to the demon Satan and his spectral army. We then witness the witch Margaret Morgan and her coven of 6 praying to Lucifer, swearing to be his faithful servants. Subsequently, they strip off their clothes, become naked, and begin laughing maniacally while uttering blasphemous words. After this, we see Heidi, a recovering drug addict. She spots someone at the doorway of another apartment, but the person abruptly slams the door shut. Later, when Heidi comes downstairs, she becomes confused when her landlady Lacey tells her that room 5 is empty. Heidi insists that she definitely saw someone there who slammed the door in her face, to which Lacey says it doesn't make any sense, but she will still check it. Heidi works as a DJ at a hard rock station alongside her co-workers, Whitey and Munster, and we see them interviewing Count Gorgan from the band Leviathan, the Fleeing Serpent. He declares that they are not the crying sheep of God, but rather the mighty goat. He elaborates, stating that the goat possesses free will and will always be punished by the oppressor God for it. Count Gorgan boldly proclaims that God must die, likening him to the unholy pig. As they are leaving, the receptionist informs Heidi that she has received a parcel, and upon checking it, Heidi discovers that it's from a band called The Lords. Later that night, she and Whitey listen to the record, which is a series of string and woodwind. Heidi has a vision of the witch Morgan and her coven, and one of them gives birth to a child. Morgan, after licking it, declares to her coven that they have failed and instructs them to remove the hideous creature. Whitey turns off the music and asks her if she is okay, to which she says she suddenly feels super tired. Later, as she goes to sleep, we catch a glimpse of a witch in the bathroom. The next day, Heidi and her co-workers interview Francis Matthias, the author of the book Satan's Last Stand, The Truth About the Salem Witch Trials. Munster asks him how many people were actually executed during the Salem witch trials, to which he responds approximately 25 if they include the accused witches who died in prison. Heidi then asks if there are any real witches in Salem, to which he replies that witchcraft is nothing but a psychotic belief brought upon by a delusional state of mind. The station then plays the Lord's record, and we see that all the women listening to the music in Salem are entering into a trance. Francis asks Heidi where she got that music from, to which she responds that according to their receptionist, it just appeared with nothing but a note for her. Later, when Francis returns home, he asks his wife if she recorded the music they played. She confirms that she did and expresses disbelief at the noise that masquerades as music today. She then leaves to reheat the food, and he says he wants to listen to that music again because something about it upsets him, especially the name Lords of Salem. Meanwhile, when Heidi returns home, Lacey asks her to come in and meet her sisters, to which she agrees, but says first, she gotta go up and feed her dog Troy. Now, when Heidi enters her apartment, we once again see the witch lurking behind her. However, Heidi doesn't notice her as she feeds Troy, and then she leaves to meet the landlady's sisters. Next, we see Heidi with Lacey and her sisters, Sunny and Megan. Lacey informs Heidi that Megan is an adept palm reader. Excited by this revelation, Heidi eagerly offers her hand to Megan, and after examining her palm, Megan shares that Heidi is destined to give in to her dark sexual desires. Heidi gets uncomfortable and begins to leave, but Lucy apologizes, explaining that Megan can be a bit forceful about such matters. Despite this, Heidi reassures them it's all right and bids them good night before departing. Later, we observe the witch lurking in the hallway, and Heidi notices Troy barking from outside. When she comes out, she discovers Troy scratching at the door of apartment number 5. Heidi brings him back to her apartment, but just then, the door mysteriously opens by itself. Perplexed, Heidi cautiously approaches the apartment, and as she steps inside, the door slowly shuts behind her. Inside, she notices a red cross on the wall, and she stands in front of it and raises both her hands. and then a demonic entity is revealed to be standing behind her. Following this, Heidi experiences a vision where she encounters the same demonic entity and subsequently lowers her hands. Afterward, she exits the apartment and encounters the witch, who ominously declares that Heidi is the blade meant to bleed the cunning daughters of Salem. She instructs Heidi to bleed them a king, and at this moment, a symbol appears on Heidi's forehead. Suddenly, Heidi wakes up in bed and assumes the events in apartment 5 were a nightmare. However, we see some kind of torture cage hanging in her room. The next day, Heidi visits a church, where the priest inquires about her presence. She explains that she was just walking by with her dog and thought she would come in to sit for a moment. The priest sits beside her, and she mentions she just needs a moment to think. The priest begins to touch her inappropriately, and when Heidi attempts to leave, he insists she must understand the celestial conflict, recounting how Michael and his angels battled the dragon and its serpents, and emphasizing that even angels are not spared from sin and are condemned to hell. He calls her a filthy whore of Satan and claims that Christ cannot save her, only he can. He accuses her of idolatry and spiritual prostitution, insisting that she must recognize what the Lord has done for her and accept his supreme mercy on her soul. Suddenly, the priest spits blood, jolting Heidi awake, and the priest calmly suggests she must have fallen asleep. Once outside, Heidi's unsettling experiences continue when she notices a demonic figure approaching her with a goat. The figure tells her they have been waiting for her, then mysteriously disappears from the scene. Meanwhile, Francis is engrossed in a book titled The End of the American Witch, where he learns about the grim fate of Morgan and her coven. The text reveals that they were tortured and burned alive in front of her, after which Morgan was also burnt to death. Francis, visibly agitated, rushes to his wife Alice with the book in hand and explains that it contains reprints of the last 5 pages of Jonathan Hawthorne's diary. Hawthorne refers to the witches as the Lords of Salem, and Heidi says that the music she received came to her directly from the Lords. He asks Alice to play the music he found in the book, and confirms that it is the same music heard on the record. Francis, driven by his discovery, seeks out the author of the book to learn more. The author explains that Jonathan Hawthorne was deeply fixated on Margaret Morgan, the Master Witch, and her coven of 6, whom he termed the Lords of Salem. Hawthorne believed that they were concealed in the woods around Salem, creating what he called the devil's music, intended to possess the souls of Salem's women. The author further reveals as Morgan and her coven were being burned alive, Margaret uttered a curse targeting the female descendants of Salem, foretelling their perpetual demise. She also cursed Hawthorne's lineage, proclaiming it to be the vessel by which the devil's child would inherit the earth. Meanwhile, Heidi confides in Whitey, expressing her concern that the Lord's record is affecting her adversely. But before she can elaborate further, she suddenly begins coughing violently, and both are shocked when she coughs up blood. Whitey urges her to calm down and quickly calls for an ambulance. However, Heidi sees demonic entities standing behind him who attack and kill him. Heidi experiences a disturbing vision where the demonic entities cut open her stomach with scissors and extract a strange entity from within her. However, she abruptly awakens from her sleep. Frantically, Heidi rushes to the bathroom and hastily consumes some pills, seeking solace from her distressing experiences. But the figures within the artwork in her bathroom start bleeding and whispering her name, further heightening her unease. Distraught and desperate, Heidi visits a drug dealer to procure some drugs to numb her overwhelming emotions. The next day, Lucy and her sisters visit Heidi, and Lucy says she thought maybe she could use some company. Meanwhile, Francis delves into the depths of Heidi's family history, and to his astonishment, he discovers she is a descendant of Jonathan Hawthorne. He dials Heidi's number, but Megan answers instead, informing him that he has the wrong number and kindly requesting him not to call again. Following this, they collectively guide Heidi toward apartment 5, where it becomes apparent that the 3 of them are witches and worship the devil. As Heidi enters the apartment, she is greeted by the sight of a vast opera house, dominated by a throne where a demon awaits her presence. Suddenly, 2 strange tentacles emerge from the demon's stomach, which Heidi seizes, only to release them after a brief moment. Heidi then emerges in a trance-like state, after which they put her to sleep on her bed and leave from there. But shortly after they leave, the demon comes and stands near Heidi's bed. The following day, when Francis arrives to visit Heidi, he encounters Lacey, who informs him that she's looking after Heidi. She invites him inside, mentioning that Heidi has momentarily stepped out, but suggests they wait in her apartment. Inside, Lacey inquires about the urgency that prompted Francis to rush over and see Heidi, to which Francis explains it was a record by a group called the Lords, which she played on her show the other night. Lacey remarks that he strikes her as someone who typically minds his own business. Sensing something amiss, Francis attempts to leave, but Sunny strikes him down with a pan. They search his bag and discover the book, and Sunny remarks that there are likely plenty of juicy stories about witches and the heroic deeds of mighty John Hawthorne inside. Sunny then seizes the pan and starts beating him with it, while Heidi hears the brutal assault taking place but remains passive, doing nothing to intervene. Later that night, Whitey arrives to see Heidi but is intercepted by Lacey and her sisters on the stairs. Sunny halts him and suggests he join them, but when Whitey persists, Lacey urges him to take care of Heidi, emphasizing her importance to them. Whitey knocks on Heidi's door, and we see a demonic nun inside the room, and Heidi sleeps on her bed. Heidi wakes up and opens the door and asks him why he came here. She then begins crying, but Lacey intervenes and advises Heidi to ask Whitey to wait outside. Heidi asks him to wait for her outside and then closes the door. Outside the theater, Munster awaits their arrival, and when Whitey finally comes there with Heidi, Munster asks them what's going on. Whitey suggests he will tell him later, and amidst this, Heidi bids them farewell before closing the door. As the Lord's concert commences, Lacey and her sisters take the stage. Lacey addresses their Lord, declaring their readiness to bring his precious child into the world. Moments later, the ghosts of Morgan and her coven join them, with Morgan welcoming the audience and proclaiming that the blood of their deaths shall ensure the eternity of their resurrection. Turning her attention to Heidi, Morgan announces they've been awaiting her arrival. The performance then begins with the playing of the Lord's music, which induces a trance-like state in the female audience members, leading them to gradually strip off their clothing. Following this, Heidi is seated on a throne when eerie screams begin echoing around her. The demon and his naked attendants, each wearing masks, advance towards her, and suddenly, Heidi is depicted sitting on a goat, and Satan is engaging with her physically. Meanwhile, very weird and disturbing scenes are shown, and then, Heidi finds herself surrounded by Morgan and her coven. Morgan reveals to her that it was their Lord who took her to the mill of the grave, intending for her to become the bread and the blood of revelation and revulsion. They then perform their demonic ritual, and eventually, Heidi blissfully gives birth to a strange creature resembling a crawfish. The scene then shifts to Lacey and her sisters, who are overjoyed to see Heidi in the form of Auntie Mary, atop the corpses of the naked audience members. The following day, Heidi's station reports on a mass suicide at the Salem Palladium. The society's members are revealed to be descendants of the original Salem village dating back to 1636. It's noted that Heidi had been missing since attending the Lords of Salem event on the night of the suicides. Thanks for facing the frights with us. If you survived this video, drop a like, summon that subscribe button, and brace yourself for more horror. Until next time, stay spooked.